Good morning. I am going to talk about tissue. So let's start the job. As I always say, I always like to divide or classify everything I see. And because we are studying human anatomy, I'm going to classify human. And the definition of human for me is it is a multicellular organism. So it is made of many different cells. And it is a living tissue. It can be classified into body and mind. So anatomy, it is a study of human body, how it is structured. And mind classify, I would say that we go into psychology, psychiatry, and personality. So we will concentrate on the human body. A human can be sub-classified into, I would say, three main things, might be more. The first thing is according to their sex. So whether it is male, female. According to their skin color, is it white, black, colored, or according to their age. For example, like neonate, which is under 1 year, infant, childhood, young adult, adult and old age. So that's the way I start defining a human being, and that's the way I classify a human being. Let's look at the next slide. So this slide is in your textbook, and it is just like trying to differentiate human beings. What we are trying to do on this slide is trying to just analyze how a human body is made of. It starts from the organ or personal level, and then subclassify into organ or system level, like cardiovascular system, respiratory system, and then that will be subdivided into whether organ, like for example, in cardiovascular system, it will be subdivided into cardiac, the heart, and the vascular, the blood vessel. And then that will gradually go into further detail like tissue, the heart, cardiac, what it is made of, and then gradually go into cellular level, which means the cardiac tissues, cells, the cells which make heart muscle, and then gradually go into basic molecular structure level. So this is the next slide. Again, I'm going to define whatever I see or whatever I say, which means we know what we are talking about. So what is a cell? A cell is a basic structural unit of a living. So we have talked about cells in our biology lecture. So what is tissue? So when these cells with the same function combine together, then it becomes tissue. So tissues are made of cells. So there are 4 types of tissues in our body. I want you to remember this. And this is, the first one is epithelial tissue. Second, connective tissue. Third, muscle tissue. And fourth, nervous tissue. Okay, let's go to the next page. So now we have a microscope. Now we have a tissue which has been finely, very thinly cut and fixed on the glass slide. And we are going to look under the microscope. That is called histology. Histology means microscopic study of structures of tissue. So we are going to look at a histology slide with the microscope. So now you have a view. There are two pictures. On the right side, it is on the low power beam, and you are seeing the nothing detail, but just bird eye side of view. What you can see is you can see a very dark pink color sheet of layer going along, and within that there is some purplish whitish structure, and on the opposite side it looks like an empty sea. This means all these little purple dark structures are nuclei, and you are seeing multiple of them. And on the other side, which looks like an empty sea, is the lumen. And on the opposite side, where you can see pink, white, with the fibrils going along, it is the basement membrane and mast cells. If you look more detailed, you will see multiple nuclei. So from this slide, what we know that this structure has multiple nuclei, which indicate there are multiple cells. And on the opposite side, there is an empty space, which could be a lumen. On the other side, it is lying or resting on a plane, which could be connective tissue. And this is a slide of epithelium. So let's go to the next page. I want you to remember this page and have a photographic memory. Let's go to the next page. So epithelial tissue, there will be tissue means multiple combination of cells. So at least we can see here 3 cells. They are resting on connective tissue. There is a blood vessel, which is a smallest blood vessel, which is called capillary. This capillary doesn't infiltrate or go into the cell, and you can see the nerve endings. Still, the nerve is going or penetrating into the cell. By this, we know that these epithelial tissues do not have blood supply directly, but there will be nerve endings in it, which in other terms we call avascular. There is no blood vessel, but it is a neurologically intact structure. Okay, and it is resting on a sheet of connective tissue, which is called basement membrane. And on the opposite side, there could be cilia or microvilli. These are the little sprouts coming out from the cell for either movement, and there are junctions in between each and every cells. Right, let's go to the next slide. So we are now going more detail into the connection between the cells. What I want you to remember is the cells are connected to each other by three different junctions. Number one, gap junction. So that is a gap, and the content from one cell to another can go freely. There will be tight junction, which means it is not permeable, but there could be some form of transport between these cells, which need special transport, or desmosome. Desmosomes, these are the structure which are anchoring to each other, so that individual cells are connected to each other by desmosome as well. Right. This is a very rough drawing. I hope you will remember that, because it is not anything clever at all. So a cell has cell wall, intracellular space. The space in between the cells is called interstitial space. The space outside the cell is called extracellular space. So from the knowledge we have, what we can say about epithelial tissue, or in other words, characteristics of epithelial tissue are: number one, cellularity. As you saw on the very first slide, there are multiple cells. Number two, they are sitting on a sheet of tissue, which is connective tissue. Polarity on the other side, there is an empty free space. And each individual cells are connected to each other by specialized connection, like gap junction. They do not have direct blood supply. They are avascular. They got nutrition just by diffusion, but they do have nerve supply, which is called, they are innervated. And they do have high degree of regeneration. So they are almost always dying on one side and replicating or regenerating on the basement membrane side. So these are the characteristics of epithelial tissue. Let's stop here for a minute. Now, we know 4 different types of tissues. They are epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscle tissue, and nervous tissue. Tissues is equal to a group of cells. We are talking about epithelial tissue, and we have talked about some characteristic features of epithelial tissue. Okay, as we said, tissues are made of many different cells. So let's go into detail about these cells. So how do we classify these cells for the epithelial tissue? So we can classify according to their cell shape, or we can classify according to how many layers they contribute to make that particular epithelial tissue. Let's start with the easy one, according to the cell shape. So if they are really flattened out, that is what we call squamous, which is scale-like. Gradually become taller, like a rectangular cuboid shape. They become taller and taller from cuboid to become very tall column that is called columnar epithelial shape. So anything starting from columnar gradually decrease to cuboid and then finally becomes squamous. That is gradually changing and it is called transitional epithelium cell type. Okay, so if we classify according to the number of cell layer, if there is only one layer in that epithelial tissue, we will say simple epithelium. If there are multiple layers of cell in that tissue, we will say stratified. When they look like there are multiple layers, but actually it is only one layer, then we will say it is a fake, imitated, pseudo stratified epithelium. And as I say, gradually change from one type of cell to different type of cell. That is a transitional epithelium. So when we talk about an epithelial tissue, we will be talking about whether it is simple or stratified and whether it is squamous or cuboidal or columnar. Let's say the blood vessels at the end capillaries, their function is transfer of contents from the blood vessel to the opposite. So this layer, they need to be good transfer between the epithelial tissue where we need simple, just only one layer, and squamous, it is very thin layer. Only then the exchange of gas or nutrition can be transferred. Okay, columnar layers, they are very tall, which means they will have more function rather than just filtration or exchange of gas. They might be something designed for absorption or secretion. So these columnar epithelium will be more common in the gastrointestinal tract. Look at this histology specimen. What I have shown is we are looking at the structure. On one side, there are multiple dark purple nuclei. On one side, there is an empty sea-like space, which could be a lumen. And the multiple nuclei, if you look more detailed, they are within a cell which are quite tall. And this type of cell could be columnar epithelium because they are tall. Okay. So as we say, squamous, scaly, flattened, cuboidal, cubic, cube. It's like a cuboidal structure. It's simple. Columnar, tall column. So once you see the cell shape, you are going to say, hey, these cells are tall and this is a columnar epithelium. That's what I want you to get at. So when it comes to the function, as I said before, squamous, the flattened cell, if there is only one layer, then it is for diffusion or filtration. Let's say if we put multiple squamous cell layer, it becomes thickened surface, which might be suitable for protection because the squamous cell itself, they are pretty flattened out and they do not have any secretory or absorptive function. So if we put like multiple layers of that, then that become preventive. So the same thing, cuboidal or columnar, they are cuboid or tall column, they are much bigger cell and they have more cell function, and they are for secretion or absorption, that sort of region. So transitional epithelium, it is a very clever epithelium because initially it is very tall and then gradually become short and gradually become flat out. So this sort of epithelium, we need it to contain a bag of water like our urinary bladder. So that is where we use transitional epithelium. This is the histology slide. Let's start with the bottom slide. If you look at the two bottom histology pictures, you can see the multiple dark purple nuclei, which mean there will be multiple cells because cells contain nucleus. And if you look on the right bottom, the cells are sitting on a blue connective tissue. So this is a slide of an epithelial tissue. And if you go to the top of the right bottom picture, then the cell become flattened. So it is a multiple layers of flattened cells, which is stratified squamous epithelium. So similar picture on the top, but it has got like a long fibers ranging, and it is the keratin. Keratin means it's a waxy layer. So this is a keratinized squamous epithelium. Now we are getting close to the end of this lecture. Let's talk about glands. What is gland? Glands are a group of epithelial cells combined together. It has secretory function, and usually these secretory juice contain protein. So there are two types of glands, exocrine gland and endocrine gland. I want you to remember this far. Any gland could be exocrine or endocrine gland. Endocrine means there is no deck. So the gland will produce secretion, but it will go directly into the bloodstream. Exocrine gland is a gland which has a deck. For example, like pancreas. Pancreas secrete insulin. Insulin go through the deck and then get into the bloodstream. Okay, so this is a gland where the thyroid gland sitting in front of the neck, anterior surface of the neck, and you are seeing the pancreas. So as I say, glands are made of epithelial cells, but there is one gland which is unicellular gland, and that is a goblet cell. Again, I just want you to remember unicellular gland. There is one in our body, and it is called goblet. Let's stop here. This is the end of the epithelial cell. Thank you.